Hello and welcome to the Grove. Today we'll be continuing the story The Eye in the Abyss by Anthony Reynolds.
The ice darkened the further down they went. Black veins spread through it, clawing upwards. A vague crackling sound surrounded them, seeming to scratch at the back of Sigvar's eyes. He could see no movement, but he imagined it came from the unnerving threads in the ice, seeking to escape this accursed pit and reach for the surface. Sigvar tried to push the sound from his head, invoking the litanies under his breath and focusing on each kick of his toe picks, each strike of his picks. The ice was less even here, with jutting sections and savage undercut overhangs to traverse. At times, the three Frostguard were forced to continue using only their picks, legs dangling precariously above the endless depths as they worked their way ever downward. Twice their progress was blocked, with no conceivable way down, and they were forced to backtrack until Hala determined a new route. Ice fog closed in tightly around them, heavy and oppressive, such that Sigvar could no longer see his companions below. The fog muffled all sound bar that incessant maddening scratching. At last, a floor of solid ice emerged, surprising Sigvar with the abrupt appearance through the fog. Hala and Olar waited for him, having already unburdened themselves of their packs, ropes, and picks. The silence here was overbearing. Even the crackling in the ice seemed to have stopped. "We're at the base," whispered Sigvar, his breath fogging in the air as he shrugged off his gear.
"This is as far as we go,"
said Olar in a low voice.
"but it delves deeper still."
The older Frostguard ushered him forward, pointing. They stood close to a precipice, and Sigvar saw the chasm dropped away below them, ever deeper.
"How far?"
he whispered.
"No one knows. To the center of the world and beyond. Perhaps to the realm of what dwells below."
Sigvar tapped one toe pick onto the ice underfoot.
"We could very easily have missed this. We come down 30 feet that way, we would be climbing down forever. Ice in her soul would not have steered us wrong,"
said Olar, putting a hand on Sigvar's back, guiding him to Hala. Sigvar knelt, placed one gloved hand near the ice. The cold was intense, causing him pain even through his thick layers. More than just cold, though. The ice radiated power.
"This is all true ice,"
he whispered, his eyes alight with reverence and awe.
"It is," said Hala. "Only the chosen few have seen it. The eye is truly upon you, Half-Quiver. Upon all of us. We are blessed."
True ice was part of the Frostguard faith, revered as a holy gift from the three. Infused with ancient elemental power, it was harder than iron, and would never melt, even in the hottest forge. To carry a weapon that bore even a portion of true ice, like the Warhammer Thunderchild borne by Olar, and Hala's twin axes, Bloodfang and Bloodclaw, was an honor of deeply religious significance. The skill to craft such weapons was long lost. Those remaining were sacred relics carried by iceborne heroes of long ago. Sigvar prayed he would one day be found worthy to bear such a venerable relic, but for now, his trusty hand and a half-sword, forged in a land far beyond the frozen wastes, would do. It was a fine weapon by any measure, and had never let him down.
"We are close. The three be praised," Hala said. "We move."
They looped along the Raven, running as a pack, with Hala leading the way. The temperature here was unlike anything Sigvar had ever experienced. Though he had lived his whole life in the barren frozen wastes, despite his layers of skin and furs, it chilled him to the bone, and every breath was painful. His exposed face was quickly encased in a thin layer of ice, which cracked every time Sigvar blinked. Olar's beard was frozen, such that it could have snapped where it struck. Frost crackled under their boots as the ice underfoot tried to claim them, making every step an effort. Only an iceborne could survive this. Even so, Sigvar wasn't sure how long he would last down here. An hour, perhaps two, certainly no longer than that. Hala kept them moving. To stop was to die. They came finally to a section where the chasm narrowed, so that they could only proceed one by one through the gap. Hala went first, and Olar indicated that Sigvar should go next.
"Do not let your gaze linger on it,"
warned Olar.
"It is not a good thing to look upon." "What do you mean?"
said Sigvar. Olar merely shook his head and would say no more. Sigvar pushed himself into the crevice, wondering what it was the old warrior meant. The gap was narrow, and he was considerably larger than Hala. The true ice seared him as he squeezed through, pressing in on all sides. He was so cold that he was sure one hammer blow would shatter his bones, but he continued on, edging forward inch by inch until he was through. A large, bowl-like cavern awaited him on the other side. The ice underfoot here was clearer, shifting from opaque towards transparent. In the middle of the cavern, it was perfectly smooth, like a black mirror. The floor at the center was a broad expanse, surrounded by massive, jutting shards of true ice. They looked like pillars, arranged in a rough circle around the open middle, giving the cavern the feel of some sacred circle of lost gods. There were 9 of those icy pillars, and it took Sigvar a moment to realize the significance of that number.
The Hall of 9,
he said in reverence. He had learned of the 9, of course. They were akin to great shackles holding what dwells below down, and were said to have been created by magic long lost. Some said that it was the Yetis who created the 9, but Sigvar had long grown out of such childish tales. Even so, he knew they had arrived at their destination.
We stayed to the edges, outside the circle,
said Hala, once Olar had slipped through the narrow defile to join them.
Go nowhere near the center of the ice, and do not look down.
Sigvar knew she was speaking for his benefit, and he nodded.
Each of the 9 must be checked. I will start here and go that way,
said Hala, indicating the closest pillar and motioning past it around to the right.
Stonefist, you start there and go that way. Take the boy with you.
At any other time, Sigvar would have bristled to have been called boy and have someone tasked to watch over him. He'd faced charging troll berserkers in deepest winter and felt nothing but savage joy. But right now, he was grateful to remain at Olar's side. A palpable tension hung in the air, like the threat felt in the moments between a lightning flash and a thunder crash. They walked towards the nearest pillars, Sigvar making a conscious effort to keep his gaze high. Once perhaps, this had been an enclosed cave, but the roof had long ago collapsed. Sigvar had the impression that the collapse had been caused by something vast having been hurled down from above. He dared not look down, but even so, he could see the dark shadow beneath the ice at the periphery of his vision. It tugged at him, as if straining for his attention.
Don't look,
Olar hissed, perhaps feeling that pressure himself. Hala reached the first ice shard and began a slow circle around it, peering intently. Olar and Sigvar approached the second.
What do we look for?
Said Sigvar in a low voice, struggling to keep his gaze from wandering towards the center of the ice.
Anything that has changed,
replied Olar. Up close, Sigvar could see threads of frozen darkness trapped within the true ice.
How do we know if anything has changed?
He murmured. Olar didn't answer at first. Eyes narrowed as he surveyed the sharply angled sides of the towering ice shard. Finally, he gave a grunt and pointed.
Runes were carved in this ice long ago, when what dwells below was first banished. See here?
Sigvar stepped in closer and saw a small series of lines carved into the surface forming runic script.
What does it mean?
He asked.
It means the ice is not melted. Come, let's check the next one.
They set out, hugging the left wall of the cave, continuing to skirt the open expanse in the center. Sigvar would never have been able to clearly articulate what happened next. He remembered following Olar, staying close as they moved toward the next pillar. He remembered a heavy pressure building in his skull, and the sensation of moving in the corners of his eyes. The silence weighed upon him, oppressive and heavy, and everything seemed to become unclear, as if he were surrounded in a sudden fog muffling every sense. Then he was standing out in the center of the ice, gazing downward. An immense eye stared back at him, unblinking. Sigvar's soul recoiled, screaming inwardly, yet he was unable to look away, completely enthralled to that giant, staring, lidless eye. Perhaps 20 feet of solid ice separated him from the shadow behemoth, but it was not nearly enough. It was impossible to see clearly, but Sigvar was left with an impression of the shadowy, coiling tentacle limb that surrounded that great eye. It would have dwarfed even the large of the titanic leviathans that swarmed the fathomless depths beneath the ice floes. A creature of such size should not be. And it was not dead. There was life, and a vast, unknowable intelligence in that stare. It saw him. Its gaze bored into him, through him, and he felt his sanity begin to unravel like a pool of yarn hurled into the night. Sigvar's stomach was an ever-tightening knot, dark shadows coiling at the edge of his vision, squirming and serpentine, threatening to... A hand grabbed him by the scruff of his collar, hauling him backward. He stumbled, boots flailing and slipping as he was dragged out of the circle and dumped unceremoniously on the ice beyond. He scrambled to his feet, shadows and coiling shapes still swimming in his mind. Dimly, Sigvar registered Olar standing before him, gripping his furs in one tight fist. Hala was on her knees nearby, praying frantically. The writhing shadows still moved at the corner of his eyes, and his head felt heavy, filling with a stifling fog. Unwittingly, his gaze turned back towards the center of the ice. Back toward... Olar's heavy fist struck him across the jaw, snapping his head back sharply.
Don't look at it! Don't look at it!
Sigvar blinked, his head a little clearer, and nodded.
Ella, he's not strong enough,
said Olar, fist poised. All the humor in his eyes was gone now, replaced with an intense, ruthless chill.
He should go back.
No, said Sigvar. I'm fine.
He should go back,
Ola repeated, looking to Hela. She finished her hurried entreaties and pushed herself to her feet, studying Sigvar with narrowed eyes.
I'm fine. I can do this,
he assured them both. If he falters again, kill him, said Hala. Go, check the pillars. She made her way to the next one, crunching over the ice.
Don't make me do it,
Olar growled at Sigvar.
I don't want to have to haul your body back out.
No corpse could be left down here, for fear that it could be used to spark the growth of what dwelt below. It would be an incredibly difficult climb back out anyway. Sigvar couldn't imagine how hard it would be to have to haul a body out as well, and Olar had to bear out 2 bodies on his last couple of climbs, he reminded himself. His reverence for the old warrior was redoubled.
I will not look,
vowed Sigvar, keeping his eyes locked on him.
Let's go.
Olar grunted and gestured for Sigvar to take the lead. They located the rune on the next pillar almost instantly.
Here,
said Olar, pointing it out. The edges of that marking were so sharp. It could have been carved only an hour earlier, not thousands of years ago. That was good. It meant the ice had not melted in all that time.
This one's yours,
said Olar as he approached the next mighty pillar, jutting up at an acute angle from the floor.
I'll check the next one. Don't let me down, boy.
Sigvar nodded as the warrior left him to survey the shard alone. It was almost completely black. As he looked upon it, the shadows at the edge of his vision seemed to return, making it seem as though things were moving within the ice. He shook his head, walking around the pillar, eyes tracking up and down, searching for a rune but finding none. Every angled surface was completely smooth. Frowning, he made a second pass, moving more slowly this time. Still, he found nothing. Glancing towards the others, he saw Hela and Olar had almost linked up, having checked all but the last 2 pillars.
Come on,
he said to himself, blinking hard.
Focus.
He made a third turn around the circumference. Still nothing. Hela and Olar were making their way towards him now, their expressions grim. When he looked at the pillar again, he would have sworn he saw a bead of water sliding down its side. But that was surely impossible. Narrowing his eyes, he leaned in, up close. He could see the ice was slick with moisture. The edges of the shard were less defined than they were on the other pillars, blunted and rounded smooth. He was surprised he hadn't noticed that sooner. Still, he felt no sense of alarm. Even as he saw the flicker of movement within the dark ice, an unnatural sense of calm infused his being. Dimly, he heard a shout from behind him, but it barely registered. The sound was muffled, as if it were coming from a long way away. He gave it no mind. All that mattered was the blackness in the ice before him. It was calling to him, whispering to him, urging him closer. The shadows were no longer just in the periphery of his visions. Now they were all he saw. He reached out toward... A hand grabbed his own. Hala's hand. He was hurled backwards, hitting the ice almost 10 feet away. In horror, he recognized the darkness thrashing within the ice pillar, struggling to be free. It stabbed from within, straining to breach its prison. He realized it had been reaching for him. Hala's eyes were closed, one hand outstretched over the weak point in the ice where the darkness attacked. In her other hand, she clutched her talisman of Lysandra. She barked a catechism of the faith, and her outstretched hand began to glow with cold light. New ice crystals began to form upon the pillar's face. It was not going to be enough. What Hala was praying into existence was not true ice. No one had ability to create that anymore. A spiderweb of cracks appeared upon the surface as the darkness within redoubled its attack. With her eyes closed, Hala didn't see it, and Sigvar was too far away even as he lurched to his feet and drew his sword. Olar was suddenly at Hela's shoulders, Thunderchild clasped in both hands, just as the darkness breached the pillar's surface, spearing towards Hela with the speed of a lightning strike. Olar shouldered her aside. His warhammer smashed the tendril of darkness asunder with a deafening crack. It was not the only one. However, 3 more spat from the rupture. "Stonefist!" bellowed Sigvar. He leaped forward but was too slow. They all were. Olar staggered back, swatting one of the tendrils aside with a sweep of Thunderchild, but was unable to stop the other one. They thrust into the flesh with relish, one piercing the meat of his left shoulder, the other the side of his neck, biting deep. Olar Stonefist's muscles rippled as the unearthly tentacles writhed into him. His veins turned black, starkly visible through the pale skin, and he dropped to his knees. Sigvar made to grab him, but Hela pulled him back. "No," she shouted. "It will claim you too." With his last strength, Olar tossed Thunderchild towards him, spinning it across the ice. "Go!" he gasped. "Get word to the Citadel!" "Take the hammer!" Hela yelled at Sigvar. "We can't leave him. It's too late. He's already gone." Sigvar watched in impotent horror as Olar was consumed. The Frostguard warrior was shuddering, and most of his skin was now horrible shades of black and purple like a bruise. More than a dozen tendrils pierced him, connecting him to the darkness within the ice. "Take the hammer, Half-Quiver," repeated Hela. Sigvar sheathed his blade and picked up Thunderchild, bracing for the pain. It made him gasp, the intensity of its cold flowing swiftly up his arms to his heart, almost making it stop. But he did not fight it. He embraced it, becoming one with it. A creeping shape, ridged and segmented like an insect, began to spread across Olar's flesh. It hardened, like cooling volcanic rock. A sickening purple light began to pulse within him, like a second heartbeat radiating out through his flesh. In horrified disgust, Sigvar realized something was growing within Olar. With an anguished cry, Hela hurled Bloodclaw, sending the axe spinning end over end through the air. It struck Olar square between his eyes, killing him instantly. It was a merciful act, yet it saddened Sigvar to see a legend of the Frostguard meet such an ignoble end. Ice instantly formed upon Olar's corpse, extending down from where Bloodclaw was embedded. Crackling hoarfrost soon encased his head, chest, and arms. The power of the true ice seemed to stall the consumption. The tendrils becoming slow and sluggish, the purple light within him dying. "Has it stopped?" hissed Sigvar. "For now, perhaps. Your axe." "We leave it," said Hela, speaking swiftly. "With the blessing of the 3, it will hold what dwells below in check. But there is no knowing how long. We have to go. Now." Sigvar didn't argue. He began to pick his way around the edge of the circle, but Hela stopped him. "Too slow," she barked. "Across the middle. Go." Sigvar froze, unwilling to step onto the open ice, but as Hela sprinted out before him, he took a reluctant first step, forcing his gaze to remain raised. He followed her, gingerly at first, then moving faster. At any moment, he expected to feel movement below him as the immense, horrific creature trapped in the ice awoke from its endless slumber. He could feel its malign force working on him, straining at his consciousness. Like clutching tendrils, it was watching him, that giant, lidless, unblinking eye boring into him from below. The urge to look down was overpowering. Sigvar tightened his grip on Thunderchild, gritting his teeth against the pain of its cold. He kept his gaze locked onto Hala as he breathed the litanies.
Turn not from pain. Its pain is life, and its absence means death. Savor its caress. Welcome it.
Even when he stumbled, he resisted looking down. Every step was an effort, like he was running through a snowdrift. He could feel the eye boring into him, whispering to him, calling to him. He croaked the blessing louder to drown it out. Then he was across, and gasped for air as the pressure upon him lessened. Hela was there, urging him on. She shoved him ahead towards the narrow defile marking their exit. Just before he slipped through, Sigvar glanced back. Did he see that purple light within the frozen corpse of Olar? He had no time to check as Hala pushed him urgently through. "Go, go," she said. There was no time for a careful, steady passage. Sigvar pressed forward, grinding against the ice, uncaring of the pain. On the other side, the two of them sprinted through the ravine, racing back to where they had descended the ice wall.
"We have to alert the Citadel,"
Hala huffled as she ran.
"The Nine has been breached. The chains that hold back what dwells below have been weakened. All the other sites must be checked. The ice must be reformed."
They reached their discarded climbing gear, breathing heavily.
"Shouldn't we stay to fight it?"
Sigvar gasped.
"The Watcher will only awaken once all pillars are breached," said Hela. "Bloodclaw should hold back any lesser creature. And if it doesn't, then we kill it," said Hala. "At least one of us has to make it back. Leave anything you don't need."
With some reluctancies, Sigvar swung his shield off his shoulders and propped it against the ice wall. His scabbard sword joined it, and Hela helped him strap Thunderchild across his back. They roped themselves together, secured their ice picks, and began the long climb back to the top. And all the while he felt the great eye in the ice below him, staring upward.